QA process here in Alachua County was strictly started off being done by our training unit. They just got overtasked with doing QA, so back in November of 2009, we developed a QA unit separate from our training unit where we are assigned doing QAs on our staff that are full-time on the floor. Currently, we have 12 call-taking positions, 4 law enforcement positions, 3 fire positions, and 3 teletype positions. And they're monitored by 2 supervisors, and we have 3 special event positions that are used for backup, so that if we need or have a specific event occurring on either law enforcement or fire, where they need additional channels to be opened up, then we can use those channels. Or like when we have our Florida Gator games and we have dispatchers assigned specifically to handle those events, they work from those special event areas. As far as the VPI system and what it's done for us, as for me as a quality assurance specialist, it's been easier for them to search and locate files. I find this system very, very easy to locate and find files and be able to identify the radio traffic or the phone traffic that I need to either evaluate or make copy of. And just as an example, just recently we had an apartment complex here on the 19th of this month that had a major structure fire, and they requested the copy of the radio traffic, which was approximately 4 to 5 hours long. I was able within 10-15 minutes to locate all those channels or all the radio traffic on those channels that were involved, identify it in the system, copy it over to a CD, and hand deliver it down to my supervisor so she could get it to that fire chief. And makes it easier for us, you know, being able to make copies of those type of calls, but even for law enforcement or fire, you know, for evidentiary purposes. And we also use them for our quality assurance and training. Currently, our trainees that are in the classroom training, they do go through a week of training where all they do is quality assurance of their own calls or other calls that have been completed. So by the time they actually hit the floor, they understand what quality assurance is about. All of our employees also understand that anything they do, either on the phones or on the radios, that they are recorded and could be evaluated under the QA process. We average about 2 evaluations per employee per week. That is true for our call takers, our law enforcement and firefighter, or fire dispatch operators. The only ones that we have yet to be able to sit down and do an actual QA process on is our teletop operators, but that's still under the process. And the VPI program is currently under development in our office, where we're loading in our QAs that we currently do on our staff into the system. As a matter of fact, I kind of finished part of that up this morning, loading those in, so that we can actually get away from the paperwork and be able to do the QAs in the VPI system, where it will send the results of those QAs to our staff on the floor on a little dashboard, and they'll be able to keep a running tab, or it'll give them a running tab of their scores from their QAs, and they know how they're performing, and they'll see the areas in which that they need to start showing improvement in. For our QAs that I do here, I randomly select the calls. In order to do that, I will pick a day that they want me to do the QAs on, and I will go through and see what staff are working for that day and what positions they are working at, and then I will go through the call load and look for the calls for that day that have high priorities assigned to them or multiple units assigned to them. And I will choose calls from those categories before I will from other calls, because I want to make sure that our staff are following protocols and sending the appropriate units, the appropriate amount of units, and asking the right questions and getting the information we need from our callers. What we're looking for in our QA process, too, is to identify if our employees are following policy and procedures, are being compliant, if there are any trends that may identify not only problems that the employee may be having, but it could also help identify protocol problems or maybe even equipment problems, and it can be done through the QA process. And it also helps give timely feedback for improvement in all these I always try to give my feedback to my staff in a positive tone. We do also have requests, such as I mentioned with the recent fire, on-demand evaluations that are requested from outside, from our client agencies. If they have a request for a specific call that they want to be QA'd or have a timeline done on, that they will make that request, and then I can pull it up through the system and easily do that. You see on here where our agency utilizes what we call the 10 Commandments of call taking, and there's 10 items on that we require our staff to ask during their call taking process. There are some things that at times that will not be applicable because of the type of call they're taking, so those things aren't counted off against the staff if they don't ask it. But typically, I'm just going to run through real quick the 10 things that we ask for them to look for on 10 Commandments of call taking. The first 3 things that is important if they get nothing else. We have to have the incident location, the callback number, with both of those verified, them asking them to repeat it for verification, and also to ask for what city for the location. Reason for the what cities in our county, we have more than one city that has the same address. An example being 300 North Main Street of Gainesville. Well, I also have a 300 North Main Street in High Springs, a 300 North Main Street in Micanopy. So we need to know which city that they're talking about, so we have them to clarify that. Once they have the nature of the problem, then they go into the rest of the questioning, find out what time lapse is. The 5th thing is if there's any injuries, if there are any weapons used, any weapons taken, any weapons involved. If you have a burglary of a residence or a stolen vehicle, were there any weapons in the house at the time that are missing, or any weapons in the vehicle at the time it was taken? Then we get into the description of the suspect, full description of the suspect. Do they have violent tendencies? Do they take medications? Have they taken those medications recently? Then we get into the vehicle description and asking if they have the direction of travel of that suspect. Then we get into number 8, which is directions to the location, including landmarks, and asking if there are any hazards at the location we're responding to that might interfere with the law enforcement or the firefighters. And an example of that would be in a pool in the backyard, or an aggressive dog, any high fences that they may have to cross over. Then the 9th thing that we ask them to get is the caller's name and address, their date of birth, and if they want law enforcement to actually contact them or not. And we ask them if they can stay on the phone, and if they can do that safely, to do so. And then the final thing of the 10 Commandments is for the call taker, because our agency requires it, that any name that's given to us, that we run it through our local wants and warrants process to see if that person may be wanted for an outstanding warrant. And then the remainder of the QA process is basically completed by utilizing the call-taking call type and the questions that have been assigned to that call type. And then as far as the call types have certain questions that need to be asked, and the call takers need to ask those questions, so we look at that to make sure that they ask those in a timely manner, and we use a timetable to justify whether or not those questions were processed within the time frames needed. And I'll give you a quick example of that, is that if the call taker is taking or processing a call, one of the things we look at is if they have dead air space. If they have one instance of dead air space more than 10 seconds long, we take 5 points from them. If there's more than 2 instances, 10 points are deducted, and if there's 3 incidences, 15 points are deducted. Okay, in the call-taking process itself, when we do the QA, what we look for is the case entry. In the case entry, we're looking for the incident location, callback number, as I mentioned from the 10 Commandments. Choice of chief complaint, we'll make sure that they're entering the call in as under the correct incident type. The actual call processing, how quickly they get the call entered, if they use the correct priority, if they have few spelling errors, they ask all the key questions assigned to that call type, and also utilizing the 10 Commandments of call taking. And then with our customer service, we want to make sure that they're assuring the caller that help's being sent, and that they use calming techniques in dealing with the caller if they're hysterical, if they use a proper tone of voice in dealing with the caller. If they have 100% of on their scoring for their QA, then they're given an exemplary grade. If it's 90% or more, they're considered compliant. Anything below 90%, they're considered non-compliant. Let me back up for just a moment, and one of with this next thing, as far as motivating our employees, what our supervisors do on our floor to help motivate our current call takers on the floor is every 2 hours they will pull up the statistics for the calls in the Vesta phone system to see how many calls the current staff that are on duty have taken for that 2-hour period. And they will go up to the whiteboard that is in the call-taking area and write the call-takers' names and how many calls that they've processed in that 2 hours, both 911 and administrative lines. And it helps identify who's actually taking the calls and who's not taking the calls. And it helps motivate those who are falling behind to start answering calls a little faster and process them a little faster. And they actually kind of motivates them into competing with each other, and you'll actually hear them over there making little bets with each other. I'm going to be higher than you this next 2 hours. And with the VPI system, what we're seeing is going to happen here is with us switching over to the system, it's going to give the call takers little tickers on their dashboard showing them how they are with their QAs and where they stand as far as how they've been processing their calls.